What's going on, everybody? Back with another tabletop. We're going to be talking today about 1911 magazines. This is very important to understand 1911 reliability. So I've been seeing a trend in the comments, and it's a trend that's not surprising. It's one I've seen my whole life about 1911s, and it's like, well, I got the gun and it doesn't work. I'm having all these issues, right? And if you notice, if you go look through the comments, you're going to see I have one very common question to follow up. What magazines are you using? And almost everybody that says they're having problems says I'm using the magazines the gun came with. And therein lies the problem. Okay, so let's talk about how to understand this and how to fix this problem and get your gun working. Okay, so you have to understand that if you go back and study and learn about some of the history and the development of semi-automatics, and I mean pistols and rifles, the number one thing keeping people from inventing semi-autos was the magazine. That's always the problem, right? And that's why you see a lot of designs where they couldn't figure out the magazine, so they just came up with a lot of weird designs where, you know, you have stripper clip fed guns and tube fed and, you know, just a lot of different types of designs. And it's because they couldn't figure out the detachable box magazine. They're really hard to do, actually. It's really hard to do. And it's no different with the 1911. Now, as long as you have a properly built 1911 to the original John Moses Browning design, it will work with a good magazine. But you need to understand, it doesn't matter how much money you pour into the pistol. It doesn't matter if you're running a Alchemy Custom, a Wilson Combat, a Nighthawk, an Ed Brown, super expensive guns. Or it doesn't matter if you're running a Colt or a Springfield or a tisas or anything. Any 1911, doesn't matter the cost. If you put a bad magazine in it, it will not work. Okay? Expensive 1911s do not magically turn bad magazines into good magazines. You have to get your head around that concept. So, if you're running a tisas, a recent one that I think are built to proper John Moses Browning spec, they do run. They are reliable. But if you're running the stock magazines, that's where you're going to have a problem. So, I've got 7 different magazines on the table here. And this is certainly not representative of all the magazines in the world, but I think it's a good enough example to have the conversation. So I'm going to separate this into 2 groups. We're going to separate it into Cool Guy magazines, Super Tactical, John Wick, all that good stuff. And then we're going to separate the other side into GI. Okay. Now, I prefer GI magazines because I like GI 1911s. But we'll talk about both. So, first, let's understand that there is such a thing as a properly spec'd magazine, and then there's ones that are just built wrong. Okay? Just period. So, I'm going to start with the one that I recommend, my preferred magazine, and that is the Springfield Armory 7-round blued 1911 magazine. Okay? I've been using these for about 18 years. I have a stack of them, a pile. I don't even know how many. Every once in a while, maybe every couple months, I just buy a couple more. They're like $12 a pop, but they are all steel, welded base. They have a flat follower, a nice strong spring, and they are properly profiled to work in properly built 1911s. And I have proved this over tens of thousands of rounds with these magazines. Nobody can convince me these are a bad magazine. They are a good, well-built, quality steel magazine, okay? So to me, this is the gold standard of magazine. So let's talk about what magazines come with tisas. It's changed over the years. I don't even know what they come with now, to be honest. I'm pretty sure it's these Metgars, okay? So here's the deal. When I look at a proper magazine, there's another magazine that's great. Colt makes a great magazine. And when you hold them up next to each other, I'm pretty sure they're made at the same factory, to be honest with you. So when I look at a Metgar, very quickly, everything's different. Everything's different. And first of all, the follower is of a different design. It's very strange, okay? But let's just start analyzing. Actually, I'm going to use a different magazine. Let's use this one to compare. So if I hold these up next to each other, there's a few things that if you pay attention, you start to notice very quickly. I'm going to use my knife here to illustrate. So if you pay attention to the back of the magazine, if you notice, let me get these straight. Okay, if you notice on the Springfield, look at the way the back of the magazine is cut versus the one on the left. Okay, now look at the top. Look at where the feed ramps open here, or the feed lips, okay, versus the one on the left. They're different, aren't they? Look at the follower. See if I can get this in camera. Look at the follower on this one. The follower is rounded on the top. Also, pay attention to this little piece here. This little piece is what pushes your slide stop up when the gun is empty. It's how you get a lock back. Pay attention to the way the gun is cut here. Okay, so very quickly, the most important part of the magazine, which is just this area right here, is dramatically changed. And guess what? These magazines with the round followers, they don't work. I mean, they feed in the gun, but they don't lock back. And every once in a while, I'll get a failure to feed. Well, why is that? Because they changed the design. So you may look at this and go, oh, they're both metal magazines. You know, they should work. No. That all these tiny little things I'm telling you matter. They matter, okay? So when you're looking at a quality magazine, no offense to tisas, but you need to take the ones it comes with, and you need to set them aside. Now, if you want to use them for training, because they produce lots of failures, and that's good to train through that, then use them for that. But if you want a magazine to depend on with your life, I would not use them. So I recommend Springfield. They're the standby for me. If you want to get Colt and just have a little pony on the bottom and pay $35, you are welcome to do so. Another good magazine is Checkmate. Now these come with like a parkerized finish, but again, when I hold these up next to each other, they are slap identical. Every little cut is perfect. And guess what? The Checkmate mags run like a sewing machine. They run great. Shocker, right? Okay, now the other thing I'm going to say is I run 7-round magazines. I know there's guys who, you know, they do like flat wire springs in there, and and I have one of those here that we'll talk about, but at the end of the day, I don't think they run as well. I think just your standard 7-round magazine runs great, and it is proven over a century. All right, let's talk about the cool guy magazines. Extendo, plus bullets, more, tactical. All right, so this is a Springfield magazine. Now, it's a 7-round. Really, the only difference between this magazine and my favorite mag, they are identical in every way, except this one has a bumper on the bottom. So if you're into that, if you want a bumper, that's a great magazine. These run fantastic. However, these are very expensive. They're like $40, last I looked. Here we also have the Wilson Combat 47 Delta 8-rounder. Now, these are touted and lauded as the most reliable magazine ever, and they are that. They are very reliable, and you get an extra bullet. However, these magazines are much more fragile. I have broken followers in these, and also I can just do this with my hands here. You notice I can just pull that follower backwards. If you do that hard enough, the follower will just fly out and your whole magazine will disassemble itself. Also, the base plates are not hard to accidentally push this base plate forward, and the magazine once again will disassemble itself. So me personally, that's why I stick with a welded magazine. Okay? You can disassemble these magazines, by the way. You can get this follower out. It's just a pain in the nuts, but it is possible. Okay, and then finally we have the flush fit welded base. You can see there, fits in a GI 1911. These are Chip McCormick 8-rounders. Now you might be saying, man, that's the way to go, right? Not always. Every time you change the design, you're sacrificing something. You need to just make peace with that, okay? So these magazines are okay, but look what I can do with the follower. You see that? That is going to cause failures to feed. The fact that you can nosedive the follower is a problem. Whereas if I pull up the gold standard, if I push down on the nose, the whole follower goes with it. That is a properly feeding magazine. So, you know, Chip McCormick's, these are the Shooting Star 8-rounders. You know, some guys will say, I don't have problems with them, but look, if you just analyze these, there's a reason deviations from the original don't work. So, all that to say, you need to, I'm not trying to sound like a jerk here, but if you want your 1911 to work, you need to get over the fact that you have to buy better magazines for it. And it doesn't matter the brand. Listen, I had a Colt Delta Elite, and the magazines it came with seemed like they were some sort of experimental sort of thing. They were terrible. I threw them in the garbage. I stomped them onto the concrete, broke them, and threw them in the garbage. I was so angry with them. And guess what I went and bought? Springfields. And guess what happened? They worked. Okay? So it doesn't matter the brand. You need good magazines. My recommendation, I know it's only 7 rounds and the Tactic gods are going to strike us all down in their fury and their thunder. But 7-round, welded, properly designed magazine, these work. They feed, they lock back, and also, something else to note, these other guns that have a bunch more holes in the gun, the 5-hole design is great because this actually keeps more sand out of the gun. So the more holes you start putting in the gun to make it look cool, the more opportunity for sand to get in there that you have. So there you go. That's my video on 1911s and their magazines. All right, and just to demonstrate, I'm going to throw in my snap cap. Loads, feeds nicely, locks back, and even has a little spring-loaded action there when you release it. Right, pops out nicely. These are just the best mags that you can buy. They're very affordable, and take it from me, 15 plus years of experience with these magazines. There's nothing better for the price. I know maybe guys want to stick with Colt because they like the pony. No hate from me. However, these are a fraction of the price and they work just as good. All right. Hope that helps. We'll keep doing more videos like this talking about how to keep your 1911 running. The spring replacement video was a big part of that. I would go watch that video. Magazines are the next one. Now, what I will say, what I'm not going to do is make a video talking about picking the right ammo. Because here's the deal. If it's a properly built 1911 and it's properly sprung and you're using quality magazines, they are not ammunition sensitive. Hollow point, ball, doesn't matter. Okay? So there you go. Hope that helped you guys. We will see you on the next one.